Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Miyaru. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other fun stuff, and it would really help us out. Thanks for your support, guys. Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, our regular show about new and upcoming 5 stars, and sometimes returning 5 stars, and all kinds of other stuff. About 5 stars. That's it. That's Wanted. We will be talking about actual folklore and history. We'll be talking about their lore and fate. We'll be talking about mechanics. And we'll be talking about Rarity today. And today's feature is going to be on Lancer Artoria Pendragon. So before we get started, a couple of things. First of all, if you hear any unusual pops in the background, that's because I'm recording this on 4th of July, and that's the fate of people who record out of their bedroom. Hopefully they think they're soft enough that they shouldn't come through strong in the audio, but I'm just going to warn you. It's not you freaking out. That's just a thing going on in the background here. Microphones. The second thing is obviously, first of all, the name. Yes, I say Artoria Pendragon. That's because I took 2 semesters of Latin. And no matter which way you slice it, other than by the power of we own the franchise and thus technically whatever we say is right, but that doesn't actually make you right, Artoria is not the right way to render that name, but that's a deep linguistic discussion we've had on our regular Let's Talk FGO podcast, so if you want to know more, hit us up in our backlog. Alright, so yes, Lancer Artoria is a story lock, not a limited, but also not a permanent, and at the time I'm recording this, obviously they haven't announced the rate up, but I know it's coming soon, and they're probably gonna, sneak it in, announce at the panel, and it starts right now, or something like that. So, we're just going to go ahead and record this video, and I'll set it up to run, because technically she's already in the game if you've beaten the Camelot chapter. Also, by the way, spoilers for the Camelot chapter, because she's storylocked. You can't see it, but I made a kind of vague hand gesture like, what can you do? Alright, so, let's jump into history. Only not really, because we're not going to jump in, because really, guys, I shouldn't have to explain to you the background of King Arthur, or Artoria in Fate either, because those are kind of big deals to just, lots of folklore in general, especially in US and England-derived areas. But most people in Europe have probably heard of it. But, the French hijacked it a little, and some other cultures. So, people should be familiar with the concept. And Artoria is kind of a core character for Fate Stay Night, so I would be shocked if you aren't at least familiar with her idea. So we're going to very lightly touch on that, because I really don't think it needs to go over again. The short version is that Arthur is the son of Uther Pendragon and Igraine, and he sent away as a baby, well, thanks to the wizard Merlin, but then when he grows up, he has to become king. He pulls a sword of selection out of a stone, which is not actually Excalibur most of the time. It's an entirely different sword. This is also true in Fate. And then becomes ruler of the Britons, with an O, the Britons. We're not necessarily the British. These were the Celtic peoples. This is a tale that has gone through original Welsh and other Celtic regions folklore into more modern British retelling. There's been some versions by the French and lots of other places, including, obviously, the fact that Fate has reinterpreted it too by making her not just a character who shows up, but a major character in some of their elements. Yeah, it's a thing. So, Arthur builds the fantastic kingdom of Camelot, a round table where all knights are equal, and so on and so forth. Marries a lady called Guinevere, recruits many knights, goes on many quests, killing giants and dragons and fighting other non-Briton people, either already in the Isles, or trying to invade, like the Saxons and the Angles, possibly. Who knows? Actually, this does get confused a lot over time, but yeah. Trying to say that there's a definitive version of the King Arthur mythology is a little hard. Anyway, ultimately, there's some tragedy and some stuff, usually to do with Guinevere and possibly one or more of Arthur's evil sisters. Sometimes there's more than one. And lots of betrayal. Some knights do some stuff, it's bad. And after a fateful battle at Camelot Hill, Arthur is grievously wounded, has Bedivere throw the sword back into the lake, and then sleeps eternally on the island of Avalon, waiting for Britain's greatest hour of need. Because remember, the once and future king. And so, in Fate, this is basically the same story, except for the obvious caveat, ooh, King Arthur was a girl. Yeah, it's a little more deep than that, but that's what everybody says. So, Artoria is conceived as the ideal king of Britain, but is a lady. So she's secreted away and disguised by Merlin. Picks a sword of selection, gets Excalibur, lots of other many interesting goodies, including the Lance Artoria, which is a mouthful, thanks Welsh. And that's the general outline of her story. It follows roughly the same traditions, though obviously there's some tighter details in there, and there's some weird Nazisms about different magics and charms and other stuff that comes up. But it's not necessarily a big deal. Alright? You should be familiar with the baseline just from understanding King Arthur's mythos, and then once you understand the other things, do that. So specifically the Lancer version, let's move into the actual real stuff now. The Lancer variant is billed as a what-if of King Arthur. If Artoria did not favor the Holy Sword, if she favored the Holy Lance instead, she would result in this Lancer form. Since the sword, and specifically its scabbard, is not sealing her aging, she grows both physically and mentally to be a more mature king. Let's just leave it at that. Who is closer to a divinity than an earthly spirit, but not quite a goddess. That's kind of a big deal, is the not actually a deity, but closer to it. And in general, she gains a more mature and rational view on life, which keeps her as a good and solid king. But when faced, at the end, still comes to the end of her life, and obviously, instead of ascending to become a heavenly spirit, which is kind of what the Lion King does, to lead into the Camelot singularity, but we'll leave you the details for that to, do it in your own time. She returns to the earth, and so still a heroic spirit. And in fact, oh, nope, I was wrong, I just checked. Her attribute is still heaven. But yeah, so that's actually a bit of an important break. She is a heavenly, heroic spirit, not an earthly one. But still, does not fundamentally change her mentality from being a human. What exactly this makes the Lancer Altar version? I don't know. I guess she decided to return to Earth, but also become a ghost king lady? I don't fucking know. The Wild Hunt? Lead the ghosts? Yeah, okay. So that's that. That's the whole deal that's going on with Lancer Artoria, who is different from the regular one. Like I said, a what-if scenario. So let's jump into the mechanics, which will probably be slightly more interesting. Maybe. So let's go ahead and take a look at those stats. So you can see these pretty normal. Her star absorption's fairly normal for a Lancer, though a little higher than most of the... the other 5 stars? Sorry, I was distracted by pop-up. Her NP charge is actually pretty good, considering she's got a decent... not super great, but she's got noticeable hit counts. 2 on her 1 arts card and 3 on her quick cards. Her deck is, as you can see, fairly typical for a Lancer. So, combined with a couple of other things, she shouldn't have too hard of a time getting started on her NP. And we'll go into that in a little more in a second. But otherwise, yeah, these are pretty solid. What's notable, I think, is her attack stat and HP stat are fairly well balanced. She is behind several other 5-star Lancers, including the 2 limited, really great single-target ones we've had, and even the permanent unlock Karna. However, her HP is quite high, despite not being that much lower. She's, firmly in the middle, and it's actually a pretty good display for her attack. But her HP stat is second only to Ereshkigal, who has the bottom attack for Lancers, and it's a bit of a difference. Not a sizable one, but it's a little bit of a difference. So, yeah, you can see that she's real good at that HP stuff. So she can take a decent number of hits. And it does so quite noticeably over the other ones. But at the same time, like I said, she's not that far behind them in attack. She's less than 500 attack behind Bryn and Skahawk. Alright, got that? Okay. Now let's move into her NP. There it is. Rongo Niad. Which she pronounces multiple syllables, but yeah, there's a lot of syllables in there. Real tongue twister. But this is your pretty typical AoE Buster beater. She does not have an NP interlude, but does pretty good damage. She can do the infamous Buster Brave chain with her own NP. Does big damage in 2 hits. The most important thing, I think, here, though, is that you will apply Ignore Invincible to yourself for 1 turn. By the way, this is not just to this attack, but it's the whole rest of the turn. So that can be real annoying. Some of you have probably learned this lesson from boss battles involving the Lancer Artoria version. And then Overcharge, pretty typical for her, charges her NP. So you get 20% back at base Now, obviously, with Buster Chains, you're not getting a lot back, but that gets you kickstarted into your next hit, so you can do these fairly frequently. And, you know, God forbid you get some overcharge in there, maybe do like an NP chain, you can get, you know, over half your bar back, or close to half your bar back. Hey, it's the thing. All with that Pierce Invincible, so she will definitely land those hits. There is nothing that will stop her from hitting in the terms of evade or invincible. Real good for that. So let's talk about her skills. She has the top level Mana Burst A, you know, dominating 30 to 50% up on Buster. So that AoE damage or even just a regular Buster damage will be pretty big with a relatively short cooldown, you know, pretty averagely short one. Her second skill is Charisma B, so not the best because it starts at like under 10%, but you can get it over 10 pretty quick, and it's a maximum of just under 20%. But remember, this is, one, it's a separate buff, so it's multiplicative with her Mana Burst, so that'll be like 50% on the Buster cards and then another almost 20% up. And also, it's for the teams, so if depending on what you're running, that can be very useful. And then lastly, she's got her version of Protection of World's End. Now, I will be first to admit, it's not as good as the Alter version, because that's just like, here, have some fucking crits. This one increases your NP gauge and removes your own debuffs, but first of all, self-debuff cleanse, really useful, especially for an attacker. Enemies like to drop annoying stuff like, you know, oh, your NP gain goes down, or oh, your critical damage goes down, or just straight up, oh, your attack is down. Forget all that. Just pop it, you're cleared. And then you get a 30 to 50% NP battery with this skill. Now, it's got a slightly longer cooldown, but still, look at that. So, yes, you can go into, with, say, like a Halloween Princess maxed out and this skill maxed out, you can go right into an NP turn 1, that kind of trick. You can also use it to revitalize her NP. At level 1 with just 100% overcharge, you're talking about that's 50% of her bar back. And like I said, though her hit counts are fairly average, her NP charge per attack is pretty decent for Lancers, so she shouldn't necessarily have a hard time doing it, especially if you choose to supplement it with like a CE that enhances that, or even better, just give her some support. You know, that's pretty easy. So yeah, they're fairly good, they're focused though. Guess what? Lancer Alter wants to use, not Lancer Alter, regular Lancer, wants to use her NP, and she wants to use it frequently, and she wants to hit big with it. And, like I said, the Ignore Invincible to yourself will mean you will hit with it. Very useful. Especially if you are trying to farm nodes, clear waves, that kind of stuff. And then her passive skills, you got pretty normal. You got a Magic Resistance B, fairly decent debuff resist, not that you care, because, hey, you can just clear your debuffs. And then she's got Writing A, which gratefully improves the effectiveness of her 2 quick cards, which have several hits. So with her average star generation, she can generate stars okay, but remember, as a Lancer, her star weight isn't super high, so they will not necessarily be going on to her unless you get an outside source, which is one of the reasons why Alter's version of Protection of the World's End is really good, because it, you know, makes stars and makes stars stick to her. So let's move into quote-unquote rarity, as in the actual rarity, not the statistical rarity. So how frequently is she on raid up? So obviously she's going to be out in the Camelot 2 campaign, which is upcoming. Presumably. I don't think they'll jip us out of this. They gave us, after all, an extra Okeanos campaign, so we'll probably get this one. That'll tie in probably when the anniversary is announced. You know, it's about when the Ozymandias banner ends. She will, of course, be in many, many class-based campaigns, because she's just a story lock, not a limited, so that's the thing. There's going to be like 4 of those in the future, if you have the courts to spare. There will also be a Knights of the Round Table summoning campaign, which will be later this year. Probably sometime in late October, early November-ish, depending on where the Halloween event lies. This is a really good banner because it includes not just the 5-star version, but also the 4-star version, the Alter, regular Saber Artoria and Artoria Alter, Mordred on raid up, both Lancelots, and then the story-locked Tristan and Gawain. So that's a really good banner to look out for. There are also a couple of banners that tie into FGO The Stage. I don't know what they're going to do with that in the US. They will probably need something to fill the time slot, but I don't think it'll, unless they decide to adapt the Blu-ray. Who the fuck knows? They could do that. People will buy a Japanese stage play with subtitles, right? Sure. Maybe. I don't know. And she will also have her own raid up in the Chocolate Gardens of Valentine. Not next year's Valentine's event, but the one after. So there's that. And obviously, she is only story locked, so technically, if you've got a decent amount of quartz, you can take some chances. Oh, I also forgot to mention she will be on a standalone raid-up on the 2nd anniversary. Not the current first one, because she'll coincide with it, but later. And she will be in several of those paid gacha grab bags. But yes, her raid-ups are fairly common, but obviously not necessarily the situations where you normally want to roll. But she is also, like I said, only a story lock, so technically you can try your chance at the story gacha. I would say you really shouldn't, but hey, people do it. And so that is Lancer Artoria Pendragon. Hope you found that informative and know whether or not you want to roll. I want to roll. And I got some tickets. And we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I will see you guys in the next video, which, in the case of Wanted, will be Da Vinci. That one's going to be in the pipe by the time this goes up and is public, but obviously, again, don't know exactly when that's going to be announced, so I don't know exactly when the video is going to come out. Try to get them out in a timely manner, and I will leave you to it. Like I said, I'll see you in the next video, and tune into our regular show, Let's Talk FGO. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and all that stuff, and consider supporting us on Patreon. Like I said at the front, you can get this episode early.